Frontline is a presentation of the Documentary Consortium.
10 days ago, the city of Los Angeles held its breath, and the national press gathered as a federal jury prepared to hand down its decision in the second Rodney King beating trial.
Guilty.
The decision: 2 convictions and 2 acquittals. Many Angelenos felt they had only narrowly averted another disaster. Tonight, in the wake of last year's violence, Frontline revisits Los Angeles, attempting to understand the tensions that segregate its communities.
I think some Korean American immigrants are totally ignorant about sensitivity of race relations in America.
We want to have all this black, every story.
There was something that led up to this. There was a context, there was a history, there was anger.
There is a low-level race war going on, and this happens to be the way it is manifesting itself.
LA is burning. 5 reports from a divided city.
With funding provided by the financial support of viewers like you, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This is Frontline.
.63 degrees, clear skies. Here in Hollywood, we're looking for a high of 74. Downtown LA, it's going to be clear all over the Southland after morning low clouds burn off. Clear again tomorrow, highs in the 80s.
For almost a year now, Los Angeles has been a city on the edge. The recent federal court decision has brought some relief from the tension. But the memories of what happened here a year ago are still strong and clear. More than 50 people died, and at least $800 million worth of property was destroyed during the worst civil disturbance in modern American history.
Thick black smoke shooting up into the sky.
We're in a night out of control in the city of Los Angeles.
Terrible, terrible pictures. All this guy did was enter this area.
Can we all get along? Can we stop making it horrible for the older people and the kids?
The question is one that has been asked of Los Angeles many times.
The lawlessness that broke out with unbridled fury in the Watts section of Los Angeles
It was asked during the Watts riot nearly 30 years ago. It was asked in March 1991, after the beating of Rodney King. And then again last April 29th, after the first trial of the police officers in the Rodney King case ended in acquittal. To look for what has happened here and why, Frontline asked 5 people who have watched and thought about Los Angeles to tell us what they see. John Edgar Wideman, novelist and professor of English literature at the University of Massachusetts. Susan Anderson, Los Angeles-based writer and community activist. Edward Chang, professor of ethnic studies at the University of California, Riverside. Ruben Martinez, journalist and author, a native-born Angeleno whose parents are Mexican and Salvadoran. And Tim Rutten, columnist for the Los Angeles Times. Starting from the same point, the same images of a city divided, they set out on journeys of exploration to very different places.
We're not talking a cycle of violence. We're not talking about cycles of urban unrest. And that's the main perception. That's the primary perception. The violence never goes away.
South Central Los Angeles. The term is code for the inner city. Head south of the Santa Monica Freeway, into its heart, right in the landing path for Los Angeles International Airport. South Central is where John Edgar Wideman headed last April.
Because I'm a writer, because I'm curious. I wanted to know what was happening. I wanted to experience it. Things began on Wednesday. I flew out on Thursday. When my plane attempted to land, it was shunted out over the ocean because of fire, because of smoke, because of danger of sniper fire. plane lands, and then I'm on Western Avenue, and stores are burning on both sides of me, and there are flares in the middle of the street, and roadblocks, and National Guardsmen. But it was inevitable. It was inevitable, and it's been happening. It's just that attention gets called to it every now and again.
What we have down here, folks, is a lot of angry people rioting in the street.
Around 6 p.m. last April 29th, live television showed images from the corner of Florence and Normandy that have come to be thought of as the flashpoint of the violence. In reality, the seeds had been planted a couple of blocks away, more than 2 hours earlier. Shortly after the verdicts came down from the Simi Valley courtroom, a Korean-American liquor store on Florence Avenue was looted. The store owner's son was hit on the head. Police arrived and chased one young man a couple of blocks to the corner of 71st and Normandy.
Well, it's like a day just like it is today right here.
Jay Kawana owns an auto body shop 1 block from 71st and Normandy. He knows and hires some of the young men who began to gather there.
I just saw a mass of people walking over that way. So we walked over that way. And about 50 police had blocked off the streets.
That quick?
Oh, yeah, they were there. You know, they had blocked off the street over there, telling everybody to get out of the street and get back up on the side. And people was hollering, there won't be another Rodney King beating like they had just seen, especially after that verdict that they had just heard.
Among the people in the crowd were Damian Williams, who would later be accused of attempted murder in the beating of truck driver Reginald Denny. He witnessed the arrest of his half-brother, Mark Jackson.
You know, they had their hands on their billy clubs and their hands on their guns all at the same time. And so I tried to tell them, get back up on the sidewalk. Don't play into the police hand, and which they were doing, the youngsters were doing. And everybody got back up on the sidewalk, and then you heard a thing over their little squawk boxes that they carry, their little two-way radios. If you get another rock thrown at you, leave. But there was no rocks being thrown in the beginning. So a rock did come in a bottle. So they jumped in their cars and they left. And so the crowd of people then moved up towards Normandy. That's when everything started.
Did anybody acknowledge the fact that you were trying to calm things, and when you spoke to the police over on that corner?
What did you just say? A black man into a white man, and you think you're going to ask the black man to help you?
That's
you're
right.
Try to use all the force that you can against blacks.
At Florence and Normandy, the crowd began to attack white, Asian, and Latino motorists. Tom's liquor store on the corner was looted.
Fuck the police! Fuck them! Thank you!
Around 6:45 p.m., truck driver Reginald Denny was pulled from his cab. Media attention turned this one attack into the symbol of them all.
Oh, look at that. Terrible. And there's no police presence down here. They will not enter the area.
It all happened so fast that the images kind of ran together. You just saw someone generally getting hit, getting beaten. Then the kind of glee, the body language of the people who were attacking him. There was no recognition that this was another human being. It's such an extreme situation. It's what I see is myself. That's what I see. I see myself. That is what's taken over in that Denny situation is mob violence, mob psychology. If you push people far enough, they go bonkers. We're capable of anything. I'm capable of anything under stress, and so are you.
As Florence and Normandy erupted, First AME, the most prominent church in South Central, was holding a community meeting to try to contain the anger.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for responding to the call of the responsible leadership in this community.
The speeches by Mayor Tom Bradley and other members of the established leadership received full media coverage, but outside in the church parking lot, this home video footage obtained by Frontline recorded a more critical event. The crowd that gathered here represented the force that would drive the unrest outside South Central.
They having church inside, but we facing the facts out here.
That's right.
Truth and right.
Reality.
Truth and rights, reality.
That's right. We don't want to hurt nobody.
Yeah, man.
We gonna ride to the Broadway and bullet. All this is what I want to say.
Motherfucking police.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you right now. If I have to die today for this little African right here to have a future, I'm a dead motherfucker.
Right. I don't think we'll ever forget the images that came out of First AME Church the evening of April 29th. I don't think that would ever go away for the rest of my natural life.
Deacon Alexander and the other men at this table represent an older generation of radical African-American leadership. All are former Black Panthers. Last April, they found themselves in part observers.
Rebellion. I was right here when they was in the church singing, and I was on the outside, and the place was burning. And that is what happened, is that the system had pressed down on us so much that we exploded, and in that explosion, LA got wiped out.
Some people use the word revolt or rebellion to make it clear that they want to distinguish the events of April from a simple outbreak of frustration and anger. But riots suggests the old-time notion of just a kind of thoughtless, mindless, angry reaction. And people don't want the events in April to be categorized that way.
Man, this is history.
We go to Westwood, Brentwood, Whitewood, all that.
From First AME, part of the crowd headed downtown to police headquarters at Parker Center. That event, it now appears, was partially planned.
Our objective was to try to paralyze Parker Center. And if you paralyze Parker Center, then most of their force is going to be in that area to protect it.
Michael Zinzun, head of the Coalition Against Police Abuse.
My concern is that we didn't want them to begin making the Black community an armed camp, utilizing police from throughout the city to surround our community as they did in Watts, and simply allow it to burn itself out. What was put forth days before the verdict is that if all four found not guilty, we want everybody downtown. We want to surround Parker Center. If anybody got to do any burning or anything, let it be done down there where all the money's at. What we didn't count on was the upsurge being so widespread. We were not prepared to deal with such a large layer of our community, of all races of people rising up. But it was well defined as to what the community's objective was, and that was to get justice. And if we didn't get any justice, LA would not get any peace.
34 people were dead in what will always be known as insurrection by hoodlums.
In Watts, because the riot seemed to be about Black people versus white people, the class nature was disguised. In April, it was impossible to disguise the class nature if one was looking for it, because Asians were involved and Hispanics were involved. And in no way could it be reduced to black and white. You have an exploited class and you have an oppressive class, and you have constant pressure on the have-nots.
Watts told the country, watch out. It started in LA again in 1992, and if people will listen, there are messages there that people can get something from. People were speaking to us, and people who had previously been mute. And it's up to us to try to decipher what they're saying.
Susan Anderson, writer and media consultant, works in downtown LA as an executive with a nonprofit organization that funnels private funding to the inner city. On the afternoon of last April 29th, she left the office to pick up her son at school.
One of the thoughts that was uppermost in my mind was what to say to him. I didn't know if he'd heard about it or not, but I was trying to figure out, how do I explain this to him? Because the verdict said to me that the life of a black person has no value. So we got home, and I had the TV on, and things had started happening at Florence and Normandy, and that was my first inkling that something might get out of control. I mean, it was unbelievable. We were watching it while it was happening.
You're seeing people, now they're pulling the driver out.
I felt sick and I felt helpless, and I felt even wrong to watch it if there was nothing I could do about it. I still didn't think what my son thought, that there was going to be a war. I still thought that it would just kind of die out after a while. And I was really wrong.
I had 2 bricks in my hand, but I didn't throw them. And somebody had threw a brick and hit the car. They had looked back and had saw me.
Shondell Daniels is the boy whose arrest at 71st and Normandy first angered the crowd. He was released within hours uncharged.
Everybody, they wasn't thinking. They was just letting their anger control them. They was just mad at just getting treated like this, you know. They don't have no money.
Now that you look back on what happened and it's a year later, would you have done something different that day?
I would have done something different. I would have took it in a different way. I think I would have to, you know, protest some, you know, in a peaceful way. Try, you know, make everything better. Because we really need jobs, you know, that's what I like to work on. You know, I don't like why my friends in jail now, you know. I don't like, you know, it could have been me too.
For everybody, the events last April posed difficult choices that all come down to one: the profound moral dilemma between self-interest and the good of the community.
You know, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe it went this far. This is what was going through my mind. Why did it have to go this far?
Titus Murphy, Terry Barnett, and Lee Ewell were 3 of 4 people who left their homes to go rescue Reginald Denny.
And I can identify with the fact that people were very angry. But I didn't feel that's the way to, you can't solve anything that way, taking it out on other people because of the color of their skin. I was angry about that. I mean, I was really angry.
I figured God was definitely chose me, as well as Terry and Lee and Bobby, at the time to do that task. There was no turning back. It was a mission that had to be done.
By the time they got to the intersection, Denny had somehow climbed back into his truck and was trying to drive away. The rescuers escorted him to the nearest hospital. The lack of police response has brought several lawsuits against the city, and the police department will not comment on the specifics of what happened at Florence and Normandy.
Is he dead? He ain't dead yet, but he gonna die because he's hemorrhaging inside. They spray painted his nose, poured oil in his mouth. He gonna die.
What was so unreal to me is that this was my neighborhood.
Reporter Naomi Bradley, who was hired by Frontline to consult for this broadcast, did several stories for a community paper on the events here. But for her, the verdicts made objectivity difficult.
Like, well, what am I going to do now? Well, at that very moment, that deciding moment on what I'm going to do now, the only thing you want to do is hit somebody. I wanted to hit somebody. I instantly became mad at every white face that was in my job, and these were people that I worked with all the time.
If we feel enraged and all of a sudden people around us become objects or become symbols, are we doing the same thing to them that we say they're doing to us?
But what you feel at that moment is, they did it, I can't get any recourse, so now I'm going to do it back to them. It's revenge.
People have been in that intersection, first throwing rocks at automobiles.
I do think that what happened, the uprising, had within it people rebelling against the established order. I don't think there's any question about that. But I respect the power of political movements and the power of revolutionary change too much to simply define this as a rebellion. What's missing was planning. What's missing was direction.
For me, what happened in April of 1992 was a riot and a rebellion and an insurrection and an uprising. It was part bread riot at times. It was at times a Hollywood riot, you know, staged purely for spectacle. Sometimes I see it as one, you know, chaotic piece of performance art that only LA could have concocted. It was not a black-white riot. It was an Asian, black, white, Latino riot.
On April 30th, the second day of the unrest, the Latino Pico Union area erupted. West of downtown, north of South Central, most of Pico Union's residents are newly arrived immigrants from Central America, many of them without papers. Latinos were also perpetrators and victims of the violence in South Central, where they are now more than 40% of the population. Citywide, 51% of those arrested were Latino, a fact that even writer and journalist Ruben Martinez did not expect.
I guess I didn't want to believe it. I mean, I grew up in this city, and although I knew all the reasons for the anger and what was about to come, I guess I didn't want to believe that it was going to go as far as it did. I went downtown to Parker Center, where there was, I guess, the multicultural mini riots, I suppose you could call it. I mean, there's a lot of activist people, a lot of people from different political groups in town, from the west side, from the east side. And among the most vocal, because they had the bullhorns, were members of Refuse and Resist, a wing of the Revolutionary Communist Party USA. And so what had first had been a fairly unified political voice fragmented into a very violent, a very macabre, actually, monster that was destroying not only other things, but also itself. It didn't occur to me at that moment that this would spread over into the Latino community. I was taken aback by it at first. And then, after I thought about it for about 30 seconds, I realized, of course.
First of all, you have to understand that there were anger in both communities, not only in the Afro-American community, but as well as in the Latino community.
Arturo Ibarra is a community leader in South Central, where the poverty rate is 30% higher than it was at the time of the Watts Rebellion. Latino as well as black gangs are active in this neighborhood. And last April, local stores, both Latino and black-owned, were targeted.
Listen, we want to talk to you a little bit about what happened, a year ago. Were you living in this area a year ago?
Yeah.
Yeah? What did you see on April 29th last year?
Well, I don't know. Like, what? What was it about her?
A lot of people thought that this was going to be, something that would only affect, like, the black community.
No, everybody did it.
Everybody did it.
Mexicans, black.
And why were Latinos involved too? What reasons?
Oh no, that's for fun. It's for fun. Everybody was doing it.
Everybody was doing like what? Like going out to stores?
Going to stores and but that's how it is right here.
Every socioeconomic ill that you can point to in the African American community is also present in the Latino community. The sense of hopelessness, the sense of despair, the crime, the drugs, the gangs, the police abuse, it was all there. The recipe for the riot existed. That's why it happened.
People pouring out of the shoe store, you gotta wonder what's going on in these people's minds.
Pico Union is a baby of a community. It's been redone in the last 10 years by the immigration from Central America mostly, but also from Mexico. East Los Angeles has been there since the latter part of the 19th century. I went to East LA, I think Friday or Saturday of the riots. I asked some people, why is it so quiet here? And then one young person told me, you think we're crazy? We're going to burn our parents' stores down? Now, that just wasn't the situation in Pico Union and South Central, where the outsider, quote unquote, owning the store was the norm.
This is one of the reasons they don't want our
presence there because they would rather do this with impunity.
This is a very typical LA riot media shot. We just heard the anchor person said, use the term they. They are acting with impunity. Of course, and it's an aerial shot, looking down on these tiny figures that are scurrying around the Sears department store like ants, and the anchor persons are talking over them. It's like these lords looking down on the commoners down below, and the distance is incredible. At a certain point, one anchor person said, "Those people look like illegals to me," when he saw the sea of brown faces looting a particular store. How did this person know they were illegals? Who knows? There were all kinds of comments that underscored the distance between the white media of Los Angeles and what was going on in the streets. Yes, it was a tragedy. Yes, jobs and stores that were in people's communities were being lost, but there was something that led up to this. There was a context, there was a history, there was anger, there was disappointment and rage and frustration, and it was coming out in this particular way.
If you talk to most Korean immigrants, they just are shocked. They just cannot explain that this kind of things can happen in America.
Koreatown lies west of downtown, next door to Latino Pico Union. It's the business center of the Korean American community and a center of research for Edward Chang, professor of ethnic studies.
Koreatown, the physical location of Koreatown is right between South Central LA and Hollywood. So it kind of serves as a buffer between the white community and African American community.
The Koreans are on their roofs, evidently armed, we have been informed.
The media portrayed that Korean American merchants were acting like vigilantes, gun-toting vigilantes. However, most Korean merchants did not own a gun. So Radio Korea and other Korean language radio stations requested those Korean Americans who had a gun to come to the Koreatown and try to help your fellow countrymen. Oh, God. That was the image that most Americans saw. And that was shown nationwide, I think. So rather than just holding a gun.
I have a real war story to tell you about that because I'm a lawyer practicing Koreatown. My office is located right above my brother's store. We guarded the store for 3 nights. And only a block from my brother's store was this Korean-owned shopping center that went, in flames. And it was pretty scary. I felt that as if my own building was looted and burned down. So I couldn't help but crying out loud. And that's when I realized that I thought LA was my home, and yet I felt like a stranger.
I had to call around to get a few guns myself, but there was pistol. I said, for the first time in my life, I was looking at this thing. This thing actually kills people. And I stayed there for 2 nights. And I thought, and I thought, and I thought, and I thought. I said, why are these people doing this? These are possibly my employees. I have some Hispanic employees. I have Black American employees. They were stealing Reeboks, $100 a pop, that they could normally own. They were stealing baby diapers. And so I don't want to categorize these people as criminal elements. Then I have to think about what made them do this.
Just to add my comment about those people who rob stores who were driven by economic necessity, social and economic condition, I'd say 90% of them are all thugs and crooks, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know about you, but if they had stepped into my brother's store, without hesitation, I would have blasted them away.
I have been active member of a Black Korean Alliance, which was created in 1986 to prevent these things, to promote harmony and understanding between the two communities. But since Rodney King incident and the LaTosha Hollins shootings, the relationship really broke apart.
They say Mrs. Du accused the teenager of trying to steal some orange juice. But LaTosha Hollins, they say, had money visible in her hand. She turned, both witnesses said on the stand today, to show Mrs. Du the orange juice in the backpack. Nonetheless, the heated exchange continues.
That particular incident happened 2 weeks after the Rodney King. Didn't help at all because we had Korean African American worsening tension between Korean and African American relations. So we had two images constantly being projected by the mainstream media.
A videotape recorded by the store's security camera shows Du grabbing Harlan's sweater. Harlan's hits Du. They fight over the backpack. Du throws a stool over the counter at Harlan's. Harlan's hands the bottle of juice to Du, who shoves it off the counter and picks up a gun.
Sometimes they would show Rodney King beating videotape. Some other days they would show Mrs. Du pulling trigger, Latasha Harlins.
Mrs. Du shoots her in the back of the head. Latasha Harlins lays dying on the floor.
That was the first time that Korean American store owner shot and killed African American customers. Before that, many Korean American merchants have been shot and robbed and killed, and no one really talked about that.
A man we believe to be a business owner can be seen on top of a building with a gun.
Korean Americans believe that media definitely favor African American community over Korean Americans. Portrayal of riots, obviously they covered as if this riot was a direct outcome of a simmering conflict between Korean American merchants and African American customers.
I feel like we're victimized twice by this. And we're used as a scapegoat. Let's forget about all our other problems. Let's just focus it on this, and maybe everybody will forget and blame it on these two ethnic groups.
What happened here was about two things, one of which Americans don't want to deal with, and one of which they refuse to recognize. The thing they don't want to deal with is race, and the thing we refuse to recognize is the issue of class.
The Mid-Wilshire district of Los Angeles is an ethnically mixed area, lying east of Beverly Hills and north of South Central, more or less at the city's heart. This is home to Tim Rutten, Los Angeles Times columnist.
The first fires you could see were to the south and east. They moved west along Pico and Olympic, turned and began to move northward along La Brea. One plume of smoke after another rising, and then finally across through Hollywood until at sunset. As you stood here, you were completely surrounded by fire and smoke.
And this is just 4 blocks from the high-rises of Wilshire Boulevard.
You had this sense, a sense that was not inaccurate, that anarchy had gripped the city. A sense that, in some very fundamental way, boundaries upon which we all rely every day had fallen. And they'd fallen for everybody. Never gets any easier to look at, I'll tell you that. It's a terrible moment.
Oh, look at that.
Oh my God.
Terrible. And there's
Of course, for many white Angelenos, this is the most compelling image of those 3 days. Just as for many African American people, the beating of Rodney King is the indelible image from this whole sequence. Both of them conform to the worst racial fantasy of both communities. There we just saw, one of the great fantasies of white anxiety acted out for real.
The first full day of the rioting following the verdict, the streets were cluttered with people trying to leave. It was like one of those fiction films of a nuclear attack. And this street, Vermont, it was just, it was going down block by block as the terrorism was spreading north.
Attorney Sean Steele lives in the hills of Los Feliz above downtown L.A. There were no fires, no looting here. But Steele and his wife Michelle, who is Korean American, felt trapped nonetheless.
The rumors were flying around. There was discussions about Beverly Hills was being attacked, and that Century City was going up in fire. I mean, the rumors, you didn't know what to trust, what to believe. We knew that we couldn't drive more than a half a mile away without encountering mobs of young criminals. Not old people, not mothers that were hungry, but young men, criminals that were just in a free-for-all. As soon as we got home here, a lot of the folks had returned from work, and neighbors started talking about what to do, because from here you can see the growth of the riot zone.
We decided to block off this street, and we barricaded both ends of the street.
This street, you mean the street that's going up behind us now? This is your street, okay. Correct. So what kind of barricade did you put up
We
here?
put our automobiles in. We wedged them in between these two walls here. The idea was that if we could prevent people from coming up with in cars and throwing flammables at the homes, that at least we had a chance. And we were armed. Part of the
community with what?
Armed with rifles, automatic weapons.
Semi-automatic.
Semi-automatic weapons. Thank you.
Right.
Shotguns. That sort of thing.
Shotguns. I see. These were things you all had in your houses to begin with.
Correct.
Okay. You must have given some thought too about what it was that put you guys here at the end of the street that night. What do you think brought you to that point? That brought all of us to that point?
You mean to break down society?
Yeah, whatever. I mean,
well,
what do you think?
My personal view is that since I'm in business and I have ex-gangbangers working for me, they told me this was coming. And you see Los Angeles burning. I just feel that what should be done is the government can come in here and put high-intensity labor jobs in the core area. Just hire people. It's the haves against the have-nots. My ex-gangbangers tell me it's going to happen again, and next time it's going to be worse because they all have guns now.
The violence last April continued for 3 days. By Saturday, May 1st, the cleanup had begun. Over the past year, much of the physical damage has been erased. The city is filled with empty lots where burned-out stores once stood. The nonprofit organization Rebuild LA says corporations have committed more than $500 million in construction and job training projects for damaged areas. But for many, the gap between promises and reality remains large.
Nothing has occurred. The warning bell rang, people were killed, billions of dollars of property were destroyed, and it's back to business as usual. Rebuild LA. Which LA? If you put LA back together so it looked exactly the way it did on April 28th, who would that benefit? Normal means for some people the impact of the police pressure, no jobs, terrible stores, that package of second-class life and opportunity we call the ghetto. That's normal.
This is the corner where in 1992, all four corners were burnt out. That one was burnt out, that one was burnt out, that one was burnt out, and this one was burnt out. But it's still not rebuilt. That lot was burnt out in 1965, and there was never any rebuilding.
My friend, Stan Sanders, an attorney, grew up in Watts. He and I were Rhodes Scholars together at Oxford University in the 60s.
Over there, John, really interesting, this whole area was an industrial belt. And it's still pretty much a place where people work, but small businesses. The big industrial companies have left. You know, the GMs and Firestones, Goodyear, they don't have their big facilities, and they were all in this corridor 25 years ago.
And that's across the tracks, and there's nothing there now but vacant lot.
Vacant lot. South Central Los Angeles in the 25 years prior to 1990 lost a net of 70,000 jobs.
Okay, this job is closed.
The issue of jobs has triggered protests at construction sites in South Central. African-American groups tried to close down jobs using Latinos from outside the community.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
The Brotherhood Crusade, headed by community activist Danny Bakewell, led some of the protests.
But we are not going to go away. We are serious as a heart attack. And we're not about to let our people be turned away with all of these millions of dollars that everybody gives lip service to. And when comes time to actually put up Everybody wants to put us away. All right, we can't work. Nobody works.
Other demonstrations were organized by a group called the LA Unemployed Council.
Yeah, say I got an incident down here at Main Street and Vernon Avenue. Right on the corner of Vernon and Main. The guys threatened to bust my windows out if I don't get off the phone right now. Hey, by the way, they're tearing out all my forms, tearing out all my plumbing, kicking my ditches full of dirt. So why do I gotta hire 5 of you guys?
Because I said you in our fucking community, boy. I said that on the question of the rebuild of LA, that the unemployed, the militant is going to have a voice. That if you come into Los Angeles and you're a white contractor and you do not allow African Americans to work on that job, I'm going to hit you in your head. All right? I'm going to hit you in your head till blood run down the gutter. Now, maybe some of our church leaders don't want to hear that. But in the meantime, some of these brothers off the corner are going to work on that particular job site. See, that's what April 29th has done for me.
The rebellion was just, it wasn't over Rodney King. It was just so many years of frustration and neglect.
These young men live in the Jordan Downs housing project here in Watts. Some Crips, some Bloods. They say the gangs formed a truce before last April. We met in front of a burned-out Korean liquor store.
All of the burning, that was not the struggle.
Right.
That was just a response to what had been done to us as a people for years. And, right. That wasn't the struggle. The struggle is trying to get back into the mainstream, trying to get people off the backs of young black males, trying to stop them from locking us up, keeping us out of work.
It's our fault too.
What about us?
We've been here. We got to be together, man. It's on us. It's on us, but then too, we can look at this government because they've been so dirty and treated us so bad for so long. They don't want us to have nothing. We see it.
We just a culmination of all the historical struggles of this country, but we want equal access to everything, and we want to own our own businesses for a change.
Yeah, this is ours, though. You know what I'm saying? You go to Simi Valley, you ain't gonna see no Koreans owning no store. You're gonna see them white folks owning their stores, putting their money back into their little sports program for their kids, back into their school. We wanna have all this black. Every store you see here, black, all the way up. You know what I'm saying? And that way we can take our money, put it back into our church, put it back into our kids, which is gonna be our next future. You know what I'm saying?
You don't get credit for it, is the idea, the strength of the idea. Because that's what I hear. I hear that the ideas you have taken control of. You take control of your mind.
They've been saying this to us for years, you know. Why don't you just take control of your own lives and move your own agenda? They've been saying that, and now that we've done it,
Certain key words like rage and anger and criminal and gang are associated with the young people, which means that, which suggests that there is no coherent, rational framework in which they're operating, that they're just kind of ticked off and vengeful and egotistical and full of themselves. On the other hand, if one really wants to spend and could spend 2 minutes talking to some of these young men, you'd find out that there is a framework. There's a logical framework. There's a mind as well as a body. And it's an informed mind, a mind that has a very acute sense of the predicament that it finds itself in.
It's not right! It's not right what y'all doing!
It's a predicament that's clear even to an established African-American businessman like Art Washington. Last April, he confronted young looters outside his pesticide business.
You call it black power! You mad at the white man! Why destroy my business?
When I first seen my store, it wasn't no big thing to me then, you know, because I understood and I was caught up to it as a Rodney King verdict. But when they took a brick and they bust my windshield of my truck in, now this is when something collapsed. I mean, it seemed like that was the last straw because that was a truck that I made my living with. And that's when, you know, you just could take so much.
Why destroy my truck? Why steal my computer? I'm trying to make it. Could you understand that? Can't y'all see it? I'm trying to make it.
Television viewers, both black and white, who saw this scene sent in donations helping Washington to reopen his business.
From everything that happened,
How do you feel? How do you feel about the people who are in the street now? How do you feel about the people in the street? Did you ever feel threatened personally?
No, because it wasn't a gang. It wasn't a gang. It was just ordinary people got here the opportunity to steal. So it wasn't a gang of people walking around with guns. You know, it was just ordinary people stealing, looting.
And it's not all that hard to put yourself, when you're not mad at the gut, not viscerally mad, you can put yourself.
I understood, really. Understood.
That's
I mean, things like that have been happening to me all my life. I mean, you know, I understand injustice, and I understand how it feels to be people look at you less than human.
Supposedly, we've come a long way. Supposedly, the mechanisms of official apartheid are gone. The realization, and that causes, I think, so much anger among the oppressed, is that the system of oppression has been internalized within the minds of the majority of Americans, so that what operates as a kind of mental apartheid.
Mrs. Dew shoots her in the back of the head. Natasha Harlins lays dying on the floor.
Can you tell what's going on there?
This is right after Latasha. That was her, that kind of dark. And the cops finally arrived. But the point is, they never even check her.
Yeah.
They never even take a pulse. They never do a thing, as if it's a person lying there.
Mm-hmm.
And that erasure of her is the final indignity.
The Korean grocer was put on probation for 5 years.
Soon Ja-du was convicted of manslaughter, but sentenced only to community service, no prison term.
Judge Carlin followed every letter of the law in sentencing Soon Ja-du.
It reflects the fact that America is making a choice. That is, some people count more than others. That choice is still the rule of the land. Some people count more than others. Some are more equal than others. We're becoming more and more like other third world countries, where there are just a few haves and many, many have-nots.
Most Korean American merchants in South Central LA do not blame African Americans. Some of them sympathize with African American community who had to endure the hardship and economic deprivation for such a long time. So they tend to blame police and failure of a National Guard to protect their businesses.
The police is saying, hey, you don't want to die, you just leave her. He never harmed me. He just tell me, hey, you don't want to die, you just get out, hurry.
Song Ho-ju's liquor store was completely burned down last April. Damage to Korean American businesses accounted for almost half of the total property damage during the 3 days of unrest. Chief targets were swap meets, large Korean-style variety stores, and liquor stores. This winter, a new city ordinance forced owners of some types of burned-down stores, including liquor stores and swap meets, to go through public hearings before they could reopen.
The case that I'm taking right now is city plan case number 920514.
The city council acted in response to concerns of the African American community. A big issue is the high number of liquor stores in South Central Los Angeles.
My name is Song Ho-ju, and I am requesting that the city not use my laws as an opportunity to impose additional restriction and assume additional cost.
Personally, I like this man here. I know him, he know me. I have no problem with him coming back in our neighborhood. This is not a racial problem or a racial gathering or not a lynching to go out against the Korean people in our community. No, this is not. This is merely a protest of alcohol being brought into South Central Los Angeles, more in particular the area of 51st and Avalon where I live.
I'm for limiting the number of liquor stores. I think it's healthy for the community, but if you want to do that, you have to apply equally not just to the victims. It's a pure ethnic politics at worst.
Hey, brother, I had nice talking to you or something.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right, anyway, we'll see you later.
Okay, then.
Come back.
Okay?
Okay.
All right.
And you know what, Kira, with a nice cold beer, and you know, right? That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it's
But if you want all the time, the nice beer ice in the core ice beer, right? That's what you want all the time.
I think some Korean American immigrants are totally ignorant about sensitivity of race relations in America. They simply don't have any understanding. They lack knowledge of living in multi-ethnic, multiracial society. Why? Because Korea is such a homogeneous country. We have one language, one culture. So they were totally ill-prepared to live in this society, this kind of environment.
The cause of this whole riot had nothing to do with Korean Americans, Korean merchants. Had nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
Yes, there were some problems, but was the problem deep enough that actually they come after you with the baseball bats and guns and burn you down? No. During the Watts riot of the 60s, a lot of Jewish Americans got hurt in terms of business. And did they cause it? No, I think it's the effect. We're the pawn.
They are the symbol of oppressor because the African American customers usually argue that Korean Americans are ripping us off. They are exploiting us. So Korean American merchants became the symbol. Rather than real oppressor, real profit-making venture is corporation, multinational corporations. So Korean Americans are taking all the blames for this corporate America.
Simplify 해달라, 간단하게.
They are just beginning to realize that we have to voice our concern. You can no longer be just simply passive and wait until someone else to come and rescue you. We are learning the American political game. For example, Korean American Victims Association staged a month-long demonstration in front of the City Hall, which was never heard before.
In terms of Black-Latino relations, we continue to see, in the wake of the riot, of deteriorating relationships between the two groups. What it comes down to in Los Angeles, in the inner city, it's African Americans and Latinos who are looking at each other with suspicion, seeing that there's a shrinking pie and that they're the only two groups in Los Angeles, in the inner city, who are fighting over that shrinking pie.
As you know, as black people, black people getting gang of jobs, you just see Mexicans getting put down.
There's a lot of hype about the African Americans now. I'm not saying that they're discriminating or not, but they seem to be more in the media. Officer Moore.
Arturo Ibarra's Watts Century Latino organization meets every month. A chief topic lately, the tensions between blacks and Latinos in South Central, fueled by gang-related violence and anger at the police.
No puede salir la gente para nada.
People can go out for anything. They are shooting at each other from corner to corner. You can see the bullet holes in the corner store. It's not fair.
Cuando menos el 80% las víctimas son latinas.
In at least 80% of the cases, the victims are Latinos. We have the example of the woman who was driving with her children and an African-American teenager shot her in the head.
Nosotros estamos en contra de aquellos elementos negativos.
We are not against the African-American race, but we're against the element that is harming us, because it is us, the Latino residents, who are suffering the violation of our civil rights.
Here, there is a talk that is going to be a big supermarket. There is none in the community.
Community leaders like Oscar Andrade, Abel Rescate, and Pico Union are looking beyond the ruins, envisioning new economic opportunities for Latinos.
That corner is going to be a training center, so people who work in that store get trained, and at least 1/3 are members of the community. So it's a source of employment as well. And people get trained not only to put the merchandise on the shelves, but also to learn how the business is run as well. I mean, the very basic.
But others are using more divisive tactics.
Drive off! Get out of our fucking community, motherfucker!
When African-American activists protested contractors hiring Latino workers on rebuilding jobs in South Central, a Latino activist struck back. Javier Hermosillo of the News for America organization led a counter-demonstration here at the same Chief Auto Parts construction site.
I don't think racism is limited to people of light skin. Those kinds of confrontational tactics resulted across the street in an Anglo contractor and his 3 Latino workers being attacked by 35 to 40 black gang members and then tore up the early stages of that construction. And our position was we were not going to allow that kind of terrorism here in Los Angeles.
Of course, many people in the African-American community would look at your rhetoric and say that that is racist as well, that you're just doing it from the opposite side.
You know, anybody who would speak that way would be speaking out of straight ignorance or deliberately trying to mislead. Because what Latinos are trying to do today is what African-Americans were trying to do in the 60s, and that is secure an opportunity to succeed. And whenever Latinos have tried to move forward, we're always reminded about 500 years of oppression and slavery. And people neglect to remember that the land that we're standing on were once a part of Mexico. We're here to stay, and you better pay attention and listen to us, because unlike the blacks, we may not overcome, but we will overwhelm.
Right now, at least, we haven't moved an inch away from where we were in April 1992. Communities are fragmented within themselves. Relationships between the different ethnic groups continue to be very, very tense. Blacks and Latinos, blacks and Koreans, whites and the different ethnic groups. The polarization is almost complete at this point.
When I saw the police doing their riot training up by Dodger Stadium, I knew that there would be people when they see these pictures and hear that they're doing it who would feel reassured. I was very distressed. I hated to think of the confrontations that might occur if something breaks out again.
The city government is involved in far more preventive or what we call rehabilitative steps than just dealing with the issue of being able to put down small or large skirmishes around the city.
Police Chief Willie Williams came from Philadelphia to succeed Daryl Gates.
We are in the process of moving forward with our community policing program, expanding from the 3 areas that we have neighborhood advisory groups to all 18 areas of the city. But it's a process of coming together. It's going to take years to accomplish. But the frustrations, I have the frustrations. I'm ready to go, go, go. And you just can't move that fast.
We live in a city that sees fit to come up with $1 million, I don't know from where, for their laundry, their shopping list of riot gear, so that we can prepare for war. But our city doesn't seem to be able to come up with resources to deal with the hungry people that are here, the people that don't have work. What makes it really tragic is that I don't see that.
Carrying any firearms? Welcome, sir. We'll get a number.
Every gun store in Los Angeles, and there are an immense number of gun stores here, has done a land office business. And it's a mistake, though, to think of this as a purely white or Anglo phenomenon. The fact of the matter is that the people purchasing firearms are from every racial group and every ethnic community. I mean, this is the one unambiguous communal response to the events of last spring, and that is this kind of private arms race.
LA's scary.
You ever owned a gun before?
No. No, I do a stunt show where I do shoot guns, but, blanks and things. So I have had that experience, but never a real life gun.
This is one of the most rigidly segregated cities in America. People tend to live and work and interact mostly with people most of whom look like themselves. Partly because of the simple geography of this city. It's a horizontal city, covers vast distances. It's possible to live on the west side of Los Angeles, say in Pacific Palisades, and seldom, if ever, see a black Angelino, a Latino Angelino, except for the people who clean houses and cut the lawn and wash dishes.
We know that the gangs and our intelligence, our GET teams, and our OSS have verified that if there are going to be riots again, that they're stockpiling these weapons. and that they're going to be used, they're going to, quote, finish the job, end quote. So they're arming themselves. Each side is arming themselves.
Sean Collingsworth is a sheriff's deputy with a booming off-duty business in private firearms instruction. He travels to clients' homes, like this one on the affluent West Side.
Put it in your right hand.
On this day, the class included an accountant from Beverly Hills and a television director.
Now pull the trigger. Now touch the frame. Touch the frame.
If I'm not going to be protected, my family's not going to be protected, and then I got to protect myself. And it's not a Dirty Harry syndrome. It's not the entertainment industry. It's very analytical.
Okay, Abby, you want to be the first one? Watch your front sight. Good. Now, you did just fine. Now look, dead center. It doesn't get any better.
Much of what happened here in Los Angeles is rooted in class differences, in discrimination among and between social classes of people. This community, this little community in the Mid-Wilshire area of Los Angeles is a good example. This area is called Windsor Village. Their average household income is about $26,000. It's not an affluent neighborhood. It's also a racially mixed neighborhood. This neighborhood began to experience what residents considered an intolerable crime problem. Whether or not it was intolerable is a perceptual question. But they decided to do something about it. And through their neighborhood organization, they did something that an increasing number of neighborhoods are doing, and that is they petitioned the city to begin the process of essentially walling themselves in. First thing that happened was they put up traffic barriers. Eventually, this neighborhood will be entirely walled in. It'll have gates with privately paid security guards. Barriers like this, walled neighborhoods like this, are a sign of neighborhoods essentially seceding from the larger community and going into business, fending for themselves. It's hard not to see this physical barrier as a metaphor for what's happening all over the city as this process of neighborhood secession proceeds. This side, as you notice, is pristine. It's clean. I don't know. People living up that street may even find it comforting. But if you walk 2.5 feet, you see something entirely different. What do these people make of this? Anger, threat, rejection, outrage. Who does this? And what really separates them from the people on that side?
Here we are. We're suddenly all attentive to the problem. Everybody I asked to attend to this morning was very anxious to join in on this because they had thoughts about it, etc.
Stanley Scheinbaum, an economist and political activist, is a pillar of the Los Angeles liberal establishment. As president of the police commission, he fought for the removal of Chief Daryl Gates, even before the April troubles. His living room is as close as Los Angeles comes to a political salon.
When we talk about class and we talk about color, when we talk about racism, I know what it means to live in a wonderful neighborhood. I know what it means to live high on the hog, but I also know what it means to come out at night and try and get a cab. And we got to deal with how we really see and think and feel about each other, because we haven't dealt with it and we're so afraid to deal with the fact, why do I hold my pocketbook closer to me when I see somebody young and black? Why do we do that?
Right now in the Korean community, do you know what's happening? I was in a mental health center. It is true, people are having post-traumatic stress disorder. Why? You know what triggers it? When they see a young black man walking toward them. They were just describing it to me. Their hands were like this, just describing it to me. Pretty soon I see sweat. Okay? There's something wrong with this picture. Now, I'm not saying everybody in this room has to go out and solve it. It definitely is the racism factor. Definitely. Because that's the image that we got out of our media. Out of our media. That's the image that we got.
All right.
So people...
There's a certain reality in how people respond to.
I know
the media
that.
Didn't,
but the media has a very... that's why the media found itself in a crisis.
I wanted to respond when you said, I have an 85-year-old mother-in-law who lives in Queens. When she walks down Roosevelt Boulevard and she sees 4 young black guys coming the other way, she does not assume that they are on leave from Harvard Medical School for the vacations. She is terrified. It is a real terror, and she did not get it from the media. I mean, there is a low-level race war going on in the country and has been for 100 years, and this happens to be the way it is manifesting itself at the moment. So the purse clutching seems to me a rational response, particularly if you're little and old.
Over the past year in Los Angeles, the battle has been played out in 2 specific arenas. First, there was the federal trial of the 4 police officers charged in the beating of Rodney King.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Stacy Kuhn, guilty.
The verdict 10 days ago, convicting 2 and acquitting 2, came after weeks of tension and fear of new violence. After the decision, the city gave a collective sigh of relief. But now attention is gradually turning to the trial yet to come, that of the defendants charged in the beating of Reginald Denny. The Denny defendants have come to be known as the LA 4+. Gary Williams, Damian Williams, no relation. Henry Watson and Antoine Miller, plus Lance Parker and 2 others. There have been rumors of plea bargains, but only Gary Williams has pled guilty to stealing Denny's wallet. Damian Williams was charged with a variety of state and federal counts, including attempted murder. He's being held on bail of over $500,000.
Defense attorney Edie Fall claimed that his client did not have effective counsel during the preliminary hearing last August.
What's on trial, in many people's view, is the justice system. And we're looking for a just society. Everybody still would kind of agree on that. But then you begin to discover that one group says the justice system works, another group says it doesn't. And so once that cleavage begins, then the language becomes more or less useless. People can't talk anymore about individual cases, can't talk about whether this is just or unjust, because the perspective is so different.
This for the rebellion, man, so bear with us, boss. Government officials ain't say we have police officers, they ain't. No matter if you stand up straight up, if you're sick, crank it up, and they gon' never be.
Every Thursday night in South Central, local rappers take the stage here at a health food store on Crenshaw Boulevard. The weekly hip-hop amounts to a report from the streets.
You said not guilty. Prejudice was free to go home and relax and rejoice. If you have committed angry acts, man, lift every voice and sing. Lick a shot in the name of Rodney King. Lick a shot in the name of Rodney King. Go!
They tell an everyday story. The constant police presence in South Central, the helicopters overhead, and the ground patrols, unmarked cars, along with the black and whites. On the December day I rode through with Stan Sanders, we ran into a congregation a couple of blocks away from Florence and Normandy.
Needless to say, this area is probably well patrolled in the months since April 29.
Patrolled or cordoned?
A lot of activity in front of this house. Huh?
The police were gathered outside the home of Damian Williams, in custody since May for the beating of Reginald Denny. His mother is Georgiana Williams. Ms. Williams, my name is John Wadman.
Hello.
How are you? I'm a writer.
Well, I'm a cook.
You're a cook? Well, I'll tell you what. I'll write something for you if you cook something for me, because I'm hungry. Why did they congregate?
No reason. No reason. This is every day the cops is over here. This is every day.
So this is no longer.
This is
no longer
nothing new.
A free street. This is
There has never been
American
free.
street.
No. This has been going on for years. They come over here and they beat up people, and they take them down, go and arrest them. So this goes on over here every day. Oh, you want to see my notes?
Since Damian's arrest, Mrs. Williams, who works nights as a nurse, has drawn attention from the media as she has publicly spoken out in defense of her son and the other young men accused in the Denny beating.
I can take a hammer, honey, and bust the board.
The justice system is on trial because it's failed. It's failed black people. If you have an instrument that doesn't work, why use it? That's the question that's being asked.
We prayed that this case would be handled in a way that would cause this community to have respect for the criminal justice system.
Family and supporters of the Denny defendants have organized as the LA4 Plus Defense Committee. And this winter, it drew outside support from political leaders like Maxine Waters.
So we watched and we waited while the young men who supposedly were identified on videotape were apprehended. We have watched as they have not been allowed to get bail.
The police officers that were involved in the Rodney King case were people who were entrusted with enforcing the law, which is a position of trust, a position that was violated. Notwithstanding that, some of them were allowed to walk the streets on $5,000 bail.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
Last December 14th, the LA4 Plus Defense Committee went back to the corner of Florence and Normandy to hold a rally, an event that became a new flashpoint, marking the city's divisions.
Of our demands that the excessive bail be reduced to reasonable amount and that these brothers be released forthwith because a fair trial is virtually impossible.
For the African American community, for the leadership to say that those 4 black suspects who viciously beat Reginald Denny, fired a shotgun at him, threw a brick at his head, that they should be released is lunacy.
What's outraged me more than anything in this whole LA experience is that the victims are being declared as criminals. And yet the gangsters, the criminals, are looked upon as some kind of heroes. The mother of one of these criminals has very prominently gotten involved in attacking the media and attacking white people, and attacking the people that say her son is a criminal. And you just have to shake your head in shame and say, this woman is really the problem. She's not the solution, she is the problem.
If the charges had been assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated assault, or any type of assault, I wouldn't have had nothing to say because the charge would have fitted the crime. But with mayhem, aiding and abetting, attempted murder, there's no way I'm going to keep quiet.
Say, hypothetically, because this is all going to be taken care of in court, say they did it, but you're saying that even if they did it, the way they're being charged...
I'm not going to say they did because everyone is innocent until the court of law proves them guilty. So I can't say that they did it because I wasn't up there. Damien did not tell me he was there.
Georgiana Williams, mother of Damien Monroe Williams.
Georgiana Williams has become a powerful figure in her community and on the LA4 Plus Defense Committee.
And we have Brother Paul Parker, brother of Lance Parker.
Paul Parker is the chairperson.
Mrs. Parker is here. This is Lance Parker's mother.
Last summer, police had identified Lance as the man they believed fired a shotgun at Reginald Denny. And before dawn, on July 10th, the FBI arrived at the Parker home.
Okay, there was a knock at the door, and my mother opened up the door because around 6:30. And she's like, well, officers, what is this all about? And stuff. She's like, lady, open the door. And so my mom asked, would it have to be some type of search warrant? Don't it have some type of search warrant or something for this? Lady, open the door.
For the Parker family, the visit from the FBI brought memories of another night, almost a decade earlier, when the police arrived with the news that Paul's father had been killed.
And he said, I'd like to inform you that your father has been shot and killed. And later on, we found out that it was a little theft. Somebody wanted to steal his watch and his wallet. And they actually had a positive ID on the guy. They had an eyewitness, and they had an open and closed case. And they decided not to pursue it. They said that he had...
They never brought charges against anybody.
No. They just said that, we just feel that it would, just upset your family more to go through the whole ordeal. So therefore, we just want to...
But your mother wanted to bring charges?
Yeah. We all did. That type of situation, you want to see some type of, like we call it, justice. done. And you know, we understand black on black crime.
Well, the black man shot your father, probably.
Exactly, and you know, we still understand it.
People's experiences with racial injustice are so different. They mean different things, I think, when they say that. But one of the things I believe that happened, for instance, when the Rodney King, the beating tape became public, that there was certainly a moment, at least, where probably every black person in America felt the same sense of outrage, a shared sense of outrage.
Reginald Denny would have not gotten beaten down on April the 28th, on April the 27th, or any other day before April 29th. It was only because of cause and effect situation.
Well, let me ask you also about that beating itself. We have spent all our lives, and then our parents before us, and all the different, you know, movements for equality and justice, trying to get our country into a position where people are not vulnerable to violence because of the color of their skin.
Okay, well, from our standpoint, as blacks, we're just on a defense. We protect ourselves. We are not out there committing genocide upon other races. If justice were served, none of this would have happened.
So you're saying because they were black and angry that they don't have to live up to some kind of standard of morality?
No, I believe that since white people have put black people in the situation that they are in, that white people are the cause of a reaction.
Well, what do you say to him, I mean Reginald Denny, if he was sitting here and you all were looking at each other face to face, what would you say to him?
I would say that you know how it feels to be a victim now. You know, as many black people over 500 years. It's something that, you know, God deal with, but you know how it feels now to be black.
I am not going to go around and say that kicking a white man in his head and pulling him out of his truck and beating him until he's bloody in the head is politics. And also I think that our movement has a higher purpose than that. Our movement is not personal revenge, and our movement is not picking out individual white people and beating up on them as symbols. We fought against that, and we don't have any business doing the same thing to anybody else.
You know, the right to demonstrate, the right of political protest is a sacred American right, and one that must be maintained at all costs. But it does not include the right to assault another human being and to beat them almost to death. Now, someone did that to Reginald Denny, whether it's these four individuals or two of them or four other individuals, the court will sort that out. But the notion that the court shouldn't try and sort that out is simply preposterous.
Free the LA4 now! Free the LA4 now!
You know, there's this old question, this sort of poignant question of Rodney King's. You know, can we all get along? The real question is, can we be fair to each other? The lesson of our system is that we can only be fair to each other when we all talk to each other. We cannot rely on each other's charity. We can only rely on our system when we all have the opportunity to speak honestly to each other about our needs, about our resentments, about our indignation.
It's incredible the way we, as a culture, have to divide things. That we've now hit upon the strategy of comparing the Denny atrocity to the Rodney King atrocity. We've suddenly done what we always do. We have one column for black statistics and one column for white statistics. And now, somehow, that will give us a grip on what these events mean, because we can compare them. Well, black people are barbaric. Well, but wait a minute. White people are barbaric. And it's obscene. It's crazy.
With the knowledge we have about what happened in April and May, is there some sort of a working relationship developing between these various communities and the people down in the inner city? I got an infinity of calls from Beverly Hills people you know, I hear they're coming up here. You know, I hear they're going to Pacific High to kidnap my kids. Are we still flying blind, or have we learned anything?
Well, I go back to that day when I heard the verdict, you know, when I think about it, doggone it, it upsets me even right now thinking about it. I felt as though somebody had just punched me in my face, then my stomach, and told me that me, my life, and anybody else like me just was not worth that much. That my life was expendable. All you got to do is be one black person in the wrong place at the wrong time, and everybody's going to think that,
Cheryl,
oh, well, you deserved it.
Cheryl, how do you feel about Reginald Denny in that verdict?
With the whole,
I mean, I agree with
know.
your feelings on the other, but how do you feel about those guys? I mean, you saw the same thing I saw.
You know, the thing about it is I say to you, what did either one of those two men, whether black or white, what did either one of those two men do to deserve to get beaten the way both of them got beaten?
No,
I'll answer your question. I know what you're getting to, and I'll be happy to answer it. I think we need to make a distinction. The king was under color of law. And there is a difference. When you have 19 police officers standing around in their uniforms, in full view, feeling free enough to beat this one black man, probably just because he was black, is a lot different than having some teenagers.
I'm not disagreeing.
No, but I'm saying I think it's a critical distinction. I think it's a critical distinction and a critical comment on the city and on society.
I agree that there's a distinction, okay?
Critical
distinction. Okay, now tell me that you're sitting on the Denny decision. You've now seen this tape. Mm-hmm. Are you saying to me that those people did not deserve punishment under the law?
Not at all.
You can get more time for kicking a dog than you can for shooting the back of a head of a black woman off.
When that verdict came out, I was shocked myself. By the same token, these 4 young African-American men were wrong. They're beating this man. He did not deserve to be beaten. Sunjadu had nothing. She had no criminal history whatsoever. She had nothing in her background to suggest that she was going to repeat this horrible crime, and I do think it was horrible. And I've said it, and I've gotten threats for saying it. How could you, as a Korean, ethnic Korean, say this? You know, but come on, let's get to some truth at last. It is so hard to break out of our boxes. I am in so many boxes. I'm a woman. I'm ethnic Korean. I'm second generation. I speak a different language. I'm a lawyer. You know, I mean, these are boxes that society wants to keep putting me in, and I keep having to say no, no, no. And you know what? There are no role models for me of people who just have the ability to see what the truth is in this situation. And in this city, in Los Angeles, the truth is that it could explode again.
This month, the peace is holding, helped by the convictions in the King case.
Aggravated mayhem.
But after months of preliminary hearings, the trial of the Denny beating defendants will soon begin. And once again, each community will watch and fear the verdict and the violence that could follow. In Los Angeles this spring, the images of a year ago stay fresh in the mind's eye.
You see, by the dawn's early light.
Occasionally, other images emerge, like this softball game in South Central between a team from Simi Valley and players from the city, from different ethnic groups. But the turnout was small. Not even all the players showed up.
Here he goes, everybody move!
Los Angeles has always been the city we've watched to read the future. The playing field on which issues facing us all are first joined. Above all, the question of whether a multi-ethnic society can survive as a community.
You see, time is of the essence, so we must act with swiftness, quickness, quickness, support black business.
A year later in Los Angeles, many are still asking when their day will come.
2001, will it ever come? Still not sure, but here comes the sun. It's rising and rising and rising, it's risen. Thanking God Almighty for the time that He's given. Me, my tree, which means unity, peace, quality, responsibility.
Funding for Frontline is provided by the financial support of viewers like you and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Frontline is produced for the Documentary Consortium by WGBH Boston, which is solely responsible for its content. For video cassette information about this program, please call this toll-free number.
This is PBS.